Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, a great movie. Now a great video game. A movie which challenged your imagination. Now a video game where the challenge never ends. You saw Luke Skywalker battle the Imperial Walkers. Now bring the battle home. The Force was with Luke Skywalker. Will it be with you? Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back video game. For your Atari and Sears video game systems from Parker Brothers. The ones to beat.
Hello, and welcome back to an all-new season of Drink the Video Games. I'm Brian, and today we're going to be kicking off season number 3 and talking about some of the games that were a huge part of my gaming background, both in early PC gaming memories, as well as more current masterpieces. In this season, we'll be digging into the world of Star Wars video games, how they got started on the Atari, or maybe even before, how they became the driving force at Lucasarts games through the 90s and 2000s, and how the new games have captured the storytelling magic of the galaxy far, far away. Join me for a look at the history of Star Wars video games.
You're probably familiar with other movies like Star Wars and Raiders, which had spectacular special effects. Well, some of that same technology is being adapted now for computer games by director George Lucas. Wendy Woods has a report.
Welcome to Lucasfilm. For the sake of security, we can't tell you exactly where we are, but I can tell you that this is where programmers have virtually free hands in employing state-of-the-art technology in video game design.
The year was 1977. May 25th, 1977 to be exact, and a new film from the imagination of George Lucas is released to the world. Star Wars comes out, breaks box office records, and quite literally changes the world. With the sequel, The Empire Strikes Back on the horizon, Lucas sees an area of opportunity for his company, and in 1979 he creates the Lucasfilm computer division. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about the formation of Lucasfilm Games and their transition into LucasArts, I talked about that in episode 1 of the first season of Drink the Video Games, the LucasArts point-and-click adventures. There will be a link to that episode down in the show notes. So it's 1979. George Lucas has a computer company now, but no real capacity to make games yet. So Atari steps in to lend a hand. They knew video games, arcades, Pong, and with the video computer system, better known as the Atari 2600, hitting the home console market in 1977, they were the perfect partner to get Star Wars video games into the world. And the world would finally get that first game, at least the first licensed game, The Empire Strikes Back in 1982.
Parker, Star Wars. You saw Luke Skywalker battle the Imperial Walkers. Now bring the battle home. Play The Empire Strikes Back, where the challenge never ends. The Empire Strikes Back Ribbit. And Frogger video games. Only from Parker.
The Parker Brothers game for the Atari 2600 is programmed by Rex E. Bradford and designed by Samuel T. Kelman, and drops us into the action of the battle on Hoth. But look out, Imperial Walkers. We can gain the Force and take them out, just like we're Luke Skywalker. So The Empire Strikes Back is notable for being the quote-unquote first Star Wars video game, but technically there were 2 other Star Wars video games before this that we know of. There is an unlicensed game released on cassette for the Apple II in 1978. This game would have you blasting down TIE fighters in a crude but charming way that only a game from 1978 could pull off. And we can't forget about the 1979 game by Kenner, the Star Wars Electronic Battle Command game.
Kenner proudly presents Star Wars Electronic Battle Command, the computerized space battle game.
Enemy scan on. I see you.
Battle stations.
Red alert.
Star Wars Electronic Battle Command has computer scanners, force units, invisible shields.
Fire!
3 levels of play, basic, intermediate, and advanced.
My TIE fighter's hit.
Hey, Dad, let's play the basic game. You always get carried away.
Star Wars Electronic Battle Command, new from Kenner.
According to the box, this is a self-contained microcomputer game which allows you to simulate all the exciting action and strategy of hyperspace combat. Now, I have the Battle Command game, so I can tell you that is definitely overselling the excitement a bit. But this amazing piece of Star Wars toy history is technically the first licensed Star Wars video game. But for me, The Empire Strikes Back for the Atari 2600 is where the story begins.
You are entering a battlefield of the future. The Star Wars Jedi Arena.
Becoming a Jedi Master takes practice. Using your lightsaber, try to penetrate your opponent's defenses. But watch out, the whirling Seeker can attack on its own. So follow your instincts. Now you're ready to take on any challenger who dares to oppose you.
Play the Jedi Arena home video game, alone or head-to-head. The challenge awaits you. From Parker Brothers, the ones to beat.
With Star Wars making its home console debut in 1982, 1983 would see Atari take the license and run with it. That year you would see the release of Star Wars Jedi Arena, Return of the Jedi, Death Star Battle, and one of the all-time great arcade games, the Star Wars arcade game. Pop in a quarter and let those vector graphics wash over you as you make that Death Star trench run and save the galaxy. This arcade game finds itself on tons of best of lists still to this day, and got ported to basically everything possible in the 80s. The Atari 2600 and 5200, the Commodore 64, the ColecoVision, the Amiga, and about a dozen others. Some of the ports are okay, but none will recreate that arcade feeling. If you were lucky, you could have grabbed the arcade 1-up recreation of the original arcade cabinet when it released in 2019, but if you missed out, you'll be trying your luck on eBay, or, like me, just hoping one day they re-release it. There were other non-Atari games throughout the 80s as well. Some are unlicensed, such as Death Star Interceptor for the Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum, and some are officially licensed games based on the Ewoks and Droid cartoons. Ewoks and the Dandelion Warriors from 1987, and Star Wars Droids in 1988. The Japanese market would also get a Nintendo Famicom version of Star Wars in 1987, which sent George Lucas to Japan to meet with Namco founder Masaya Nakamura to sign the deal. But in the rest of the world, we'd have to wait until 1991 for, as the headline of the Spring of '91 Adventurer magazine says, Star Wars goes Nintendo. Not only that, but this would be the first Star Wars game that Lucasfilm Games would develop themselves.
Lonnie, what have you got for our viewers today?
Got something very special for our viewers. Lucasfilm Game is recreating one of the big screen's most famous movies, Star Wars, for your small screen Nintendo Entertainment System. The Star Wars game marks the first time Lucasfilm Game has created a game for the Nintendo. Like the film, the game follows the adventures of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Princess Leia as they fight the forces of the dark side and destroy the Death Star. In this scene, Luke is in his land speeder cruising on a Tatooine desert on his search for Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Thanks, Kalani. Looks like a great game.
The 1991 NES Star Wars game, while published by JVC, was the first Star Wars game that was developed by Lucasfilm Games, though they did have some outside help from the Australian game studio Beam Software, who was more familiar with designing games for the NES. Now, Lucasfilm Games had been making their own games for about 7 years by the time this releases in 1991. But with JVC holding the distribution rights for Star Wars games, a deal was struck. According to Rogue Leaders, The Story of Lucasarts by Rob Smith, JVC would pay an advance of $1 million to Lucasfilm for producing the games, then JVC would publish them. It's a win-win for everyone, especially the Lucasfilm Games employees who would be getting a whole new IP to sink their creative teeth into.
Brought to life through first-person 3D Mode 7 graphics, Super Empire Strikes Back lets the player take on a variety of roles from the Star Wars saga. You begin the adventure as Luke Skywalker, battling through the icy caves and plains of Hoth with your blaster and lightsaber. Then, jump into your snow speeder to defend the Rebel base against the amazing Imperial walkers. As Han Solo, you must fight your way to the Rebels' Echo base to get to the Millennium Falcon. Escape Imperial forces by seeking safety in an asteroid field. As Chewbacca, you head for Cloud City in search of Han's old smuggling buddy, Landau Calrissian. And of course, all the action is accompanied by digitized sound effects and music, all taken directly from the movie.
The 1991 Star Wars game was incredibly difficult, as most Nintendo games were, but as you might imagine, it was also incredibly popular. The home video game console market had exploded with the introduction of the NES, so we get Empire Strikes Back just a year later in 1992. And with the Super Nintendo hitting store shelves, their own versions would be making their way into the hands of eager Star Wars gamers. Super Star Wars, Super Empire Strikes Back, and Super Return of the Jedi released in 1992, 93, and 94 respectively. These games looked great, were fun, but were kind of insane. John Knowles, who is the animation supervisor for the Super Nintendo games, state that in this area, we really went off the deep end with canon and authenticity.
Since basically what we're doing is trying to translate what we saw in the movie screen that George Lucas gave us with Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, we try to translate it to video game. And to do that, sometimes we go to the movie, we look at a scene, we look at what happened, and we take the best parts of that. For instance, when Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker got in their climactic duel at the end of The Empire Strikes Back, there's a lot of exciting swordplay going on. My job is to try to make that fun. So I watched Darth Vader very closely, and from that, we try to make an exciting video game animation where he still does all the moves that you saw in the movie, plus some added for fun factor, and a few things you probably never imagined Darth Vader could do, but that's always a nice surprise.
The games were a financial success, despite blowing way past that $1 million advance from JVC. But the deal was for 6 games, and we only got 5, so for the 6th, Lucasfilm Games, now Lucasarts, would be making a big change. So saddle up, Rookie One, it's 1993, and CD-ROMs are here. But while we're waiting for that shiny new CD drive to get delivered and installed, let's take a quick break so Michaela from Drink the Movies can stop in to help us with a cocktail that has taken many shapes, just like those mini-bosses do in that 1987 Star Wars game. Well, hello, Michaela. Welcome back to Drink the Video Games. Welcome back. How are you doing today?
I'm awesome. Thanks so much for having me. Happy July. It's almost July now.
Yeah, it is almost July. This is the first episode of my 3rd season of Drink the Video Games, so that's pretty exciting, right? Got started very cool. Just not quite a year ago. And this season, I'm doing something that is very near and dear to me, and I think it's kind of very near and dear to you because we've had a lot of experiences in the world of Star Wars together. So we've seen Star Wars at the theater together, 4, I think, by my last count. We've seen it at the movie theater together. That's been pretty good. We have been to Disney World and Disneyland to see Galaxy's Edge and take in the Batuu Star Wars of it all. You and I got to go on the Galactic Star Cruiser, which was epic and exciting and amazing. We've done May the 4th episodes for Drink the Movies, which are always a good time, coming up with cocktails for the Star Wars universe. We've done Patreon bonus episodes for Andor and for the Ewok Adventures. That's pretty good. But tell me, Michaela, have you ever played a Star Wars video game?
I have not. Shocker. I know, but I have not.
If you've been listening to Drink the Video Games for any time now, that should come as no surprise to you. But yeah, Star Wars video games, they are monumental. They have changed the video game industry. They have been full of, some of the best games of all time. And they started back in 1982. So you've never played one necessarily. Do you know of any? Do you remember seeing any? Maybe at the arcade, or did a friend play a Star Wars game? Maybe your kid plays one? Yeah, throw me a bone here, Michaela. Come on.
There was a game, and I'm not going to remember the name of it, but it was in the late 90s that had come out.
Okay.
You'll probably know exactly what I'm talking about, but it was in the late 90s, and I feel like it was like right around the time that the second trilogy kind of was coming to the screen. Yeah. And I had a boyfriend who really also loved Star Wars, right? And so he would play that game. So I've watched him play that, but I never played any of it. I'm much better at I think that whole idea of a YouTube channel of watching someone else play a video game came from someone like me, because I'm much better watching somebody else do it than actually having the eye-hand coordination to figure it out myself. I'm really bad at that.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, you can watch me play, I guess, the Star Wars video games here this season as I go through. I'm going to be playing through a couple of those as I make my way into kind of the individual episodes of the season. But what you are really good at is mixing up a cocktail for everyone here on Drink the Video Games, which is why you come. Maybe one day you'll have played a video game that we're talking about, but that day is not today. But you have made a scorpion cocktail for everyone, and it's delicious. And I have some crazy reasonings why I picked this cocktail for this episode. But if you would be so kind, could you throw one together for everyone?
Sure. First of all, you're going to need a blender for this because it's hot out and this requires a blender. It's worth it. Trust me. You're going to take 1.5 ounces of very fresh squeezed lemon juice. You're going to take 2 ounces of freshly squeezed orange juice. You're going to take 1/2 ounce of orgeat. You can find that in a liquor store. 1 ounce of your favorite brandy. It doesn't have to be anything special. And 2 ounces of your favorite white rum. So Bacardi it is, kids. And what you're going to do is you're going to combine all those ingredients into a blender with a single scoop of ice cubes. Now, the scoop can be like about a cup. I'm going to say a cup because anything less than that, it's going to be too slushy. Anything more than that, it's going to become like ice cream, and you don't really want that. You're going to blend this on low for 10 seconds until the ice is mostly pulverized. And then you're going to move that up to high for 5 to 10 seconds to completely crush the ice. That is the key, by the way, of making the most amazing, like frothy, like ice melt in your mouth frozen cocktail, is that you turn it on for medium for about 10 seconds, turn it off, turn it right back on to as high as you can for another 10 or 20 seconds. If you do it any other way, you're going to get crushed pieces in the ice melt, and it will not be the same. It will have like shards. It's not going to be as smooth. Then you're going to pour this into a glass. Now, if you have an orchid flower, you could put an orchid flower on top of it, make it real pretty, or you could just drink it. I just drank mine. It's delicious. This is one of my favorite drinks now. It's brand new to me, but I'm really, really digging it. And if you have the fresher ingredients, it's going to taste that much better.
Yeah, absolutely. This one is a really good one, and it's definitely a classic of the tiki variety here, the Scorpion cocktail. It comes from Trader Vic's, which was a tiki bar. Trader Vic was a bartender, an open tiki bar just outside of Oakland, California, in Emeryville, California, which if you go from Trader Vic's to Skywalker Ranch, it takes you about an hour to get there, just under an hour. So these places are close geographically. It's also close time-wise. So the original version of this, it was a punch that Trader Vic made in 1947, but it gets refined in 1972 in a punch and a single cocktail, which is what this single cocktail is here, the Scorpion that Michaela just made for everyone. So, 1972, 1977, pretty close in years, and like I said, geographically, pretty close there. But the reason I picked the Scorpion, Michaela, you might be thinking, like, why are you making a Scorpion? This is a Star Wars cocktail, and we've talked about Star Wars cocktails over on Drink the Movies, but I thought that this was really fun because in one of the very first Star Wars games, it's the Namco Star Wars, which came out in Japan. One of the mini-bosses that you fight is called Sasori Vader. Now, Sasori is Japanese for Scorpion, because the Scorpion, it transforms and it looks like Darth Vader, and then you start fighting it, and it is a Scorpion. So that's the one everyone knows. It takes place in the first level of the game there. So you fight this little Scorpion there, the Sasori Vader. You also fight Clodos Vader, who's a shark, Gaius Vader, who is like a skeletal, like pterodactyl thing, and then Wampa Vader, which is the Wampa from the films there as well. But yeah, the Sasori Vader cocktail. I thought that was neat, and it's too like niche of a thing, like in the video game world, to not pay homage to here with this cocktails. So I'm really glad that you liked it. And one of the other things you can do is you can play with the rum a little bit if you want. You can swap out the white rum for a spiced rum, or like a blackstrap rum, or an aged rum, and that's going to change the flavor profile a little bit, just like the Darth Vader imitators do there in the game.
This is a good one. It's worth your time. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm really loving the idea of this Scorpion Vader thing. I'm gonna have to check this out, because that sounds like that's probably was a very cool thing to see. Like as like Vader turns into a Scorpion as you're fighting him. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Just like Star Wars video games, pretty cool. And the Scorpion cocktail, pretty cool. Speaking of pretty cool, that has been Michaela from Drink the Movies. Thank you so much for joining me here on this episode of Drink the Video Games. But now that we have this made, it's time to get JVC their last entry, and let's get back to the video games.
Star Wars. Rebel Assault for Sega CD packs all the action and intrigue you expect from a JVC Star Wars game, plus cinematic sequences from the movies as well as original footage. A dozen missions call for your cunning, your wit, and your quick response time. Feel the Force as you learn to pilot 4 completely different spacecraft in the name of the Rebel Alliance. Digitized speech from the movies.
Your report, Commander.
We have them, Lord Vader. Within moments, our troops will board their ship. We'll then have the stolen plans back in our possession. And Princess Leia as well.
Excellent. I shall oversee her interrogation personally.
And an original John Williams score performed by the London Symphony Orchestra. Make Rebel Assault an unforgettable deep space epic gamers will return to again and again as they face the Imperial forces and save the universe from the ruthless Emperor.
Now, I'll actually be covering Rebel Assault and Rebel Assault 2, The Hidden Empire, in their own episode, but the first game is worth noting here because it finalized the deal with JVC and allowed Lucasarts to self-publish their own Star Wars games going forward. Lucasarts would distribute the PC and Mac version, while JVC would handle the Sega CD version. Look for more information about these games next month. Besides, there is another space combat series that also gets its start in 1993 that we need to talk about.
From the creators of Star Wars comes a thrilling new adventure game based on the blockbuster film series.
Sir, our TIE interceptors have located a rebel fleet orbiting the planet Torcana.
Excellent. Prepare the attack.
Move our Star Destroyers within range and launch all TIE Fighter squadrons.
At once, sir.
We are under attack by Imperial Star Destroyers. Begin evasive maneuvers. Launch the X-Wing fighters.
Developed by Totally Games and published by Lucasarts in the US and US Gold in Europe, this space combat flight simulator by Lawrence Holland and Edward Kilhan turned the page on Star Wars video games. X-Wing would drop you right into the action and give you the feelings of flying your own combat missions for the Rebel Alliance. This is the first non-adventure game to use the iMuse music system, so that lets composer Peter McConnell be really precise with how and when to use his own themes alongside the classic John Williams score to fully immerse the player into the video game environments. The follow-up, TIE Fighter, would improve on the graphics and gameplay, and this time seat you on the side of the Empire. And while X-Wing was held as a great game, TIE Fighter, on the other hand, was and is still held as one of the greatest video games of all time, being chosen as number 2 on IGN's top 25 PC games of all time in 2007. There would be the multiplayer title, X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, released in 1997, and the series would conclude with X-Wing Alliance in 1999, with Lawrence Holland serving as the game designer for every installment. With the X-Wing and TIE Fighter series covering the basis for space combat, LucasArts would look to the FPS genre to fulfill gamers' desires to blast some stormtroopers, and maybe even become a Jedi Knight.
Without question, the crowd pleaser at the LucasArts booth was Dark Forces. Like many other companies at the show, LucasArts has clearly acknowledged the popularity of Doom and concocted a first-person perspective, free-scrolling shooter of their own. Unlike many companies at the show, however, Dark Forces isn't just a cheap knockoff. It's an excellent game in its own right, and one which stands out from the hordes of Dune clones shortly to be unleashed. Dark Forces uses a proprietary engine developed by LucasArts. It's fast and smooth, and the texture maps are amazing. You move freely throughout the various settings for the game, blasting stormtroopers and other Imperials, seeking the objective of whatever mission you're on. In addition to 360-degree free-scrolling movement, you can look up and down, jump, and duck. In terms of sheer fun, Dark Forces seems to be the kind of game you'll find yourself having to be dragged away from kicking and screaming, even in its early stages. Slap a power cell into your trusty blaster and prepare to take aim at the dark side in time for Christmas.
With the first-person shooter genre taking over the gaming world, largely thanks to 1992's Wolfenstein 3D, and to a greater extent 1993's Doom, LucasArts would look to that genre as a way to carry on their Star Wars storytelling. Actually, a fan-made Doom mod where you were running around the Death Star and blasting enemies was their inspiration, according to project leader Darren Stinnett in an interview with Electronic Gaming Monthly. Dark Forces would see Luke Skywalker as the main character in the early iterations of the game, before making way for Kyle Katarn to pilot the Moldy Crow into our hearts. Releasing in 1995 for PC and Mac, with a PlayStation version coming the following year, Dark Forces would put players in the action leading up to the stealing of the Death Star plans, and would spawn its own series, the Jedi Knight series, which would gain 4 entries over the next 9 years. Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2 releases in 1997, and Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast and Jedi Knight Jedi Academy would release in 2002 and 2003. Playing as Kyle Katarn was exciting, and getting the full Star Wars immersion of a first-person shooter was an incredible achievement for the time, plus it showed that players could get behind characters outside of the Star Wars trilogy, so LucasArts would take that to the next level in 1996 with a new character and a multimedia project the likes of which had never been seen.
Yeah, but what do you got for us today?
This is Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. It's available on the Nintendo 64, and really, it's perhaps one of the coolest video games I think that's ever been released. I mean, it puts you inside the Star Wars universe in a game that's just so realistic, it's really like you're playing the movie.
Well, just in case anybody doesn't know, you are our ace video critic, right? And games critic. You do a great job of this.
Thanks. Yeah, I read a column for the San Francisco Examiner and also edited a website called Video Game Spot on the World Wide Web.
So you know about this stuff. Now, tell me about the particular details of this game.
This game, it retails for about $80, and it's called Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. It just came out about 2 weeks ago, and you should be able to find one if you look hard enough amidst your local video game retailer. It's available on the Nintendo 64, which stores are just getting more shipments of now, a system that retails for $199. It's really perhaps just the most realistic video game system that's ever been put out.
With a book and accompanying soundtrack releasing in April, comics releasing in May, a line of toys and action figures releasing over the summer, and the video game finally releasing in December on the brand new Nintendo 64, 1996's Shadows of the Empire reminded the world of the marketability of Star Wars, and helped prepare us for what George Lucas had up his sleeve for the next few years. Dash Rendar is a mercenary smuggler and will be getting his own episode of the podcast, but I look at Shadows of the Empire as the start of this sort of in-between period for Star Wars video games. The original franchise games are winding down, and with the prequel games a couple of years off, LucasArts has a pretty wide berth to tell stories and play with genres before the next wave kicks in. Plus, if you listen back to my episode on Grim Fandango, it's about this time that LucasArts puts all its chips in the Star Wars basket. So between 1997 and 1999, we would see an array of Star Wars games. My personal favorite, Yoda Stories, and the fighting game Masters of Teräs Käsi, released in 1997. The real-time strategy game Rebellion, the educational title DroidWorks, and the first entry in a new space combat series, Rogue Squadron, all released in 1998. And now that it's 1999, buckle up, the Phantom Menace has arrived.
Kids of the 90s are good with any kind of game.
Jake Lloyd will get no argument from our Tony Potts. The 10-year-old star of the Phantom Menace challenged Tony to a head-to-head contest in the new Nintendo Star Wars Episode 1 racer game.
You're still on your first lap?
Based on Jake's thrilling pod race scene in the film, Jake says the game might even be better.
Well, in the film, I didn't actually my pod racer didn't move. This time I get to race it, so it's pretty fun.
There are too many games that release with prequel connections between 1999 and 2005 to cover them all. Somewhere in the neighborhood of about 20 games release, plus another dozen or so educational titles. A lot of these games are fondly remembered, and a few even spawn sequels and remasters years later. 1999's Episode 1 Racer would be the next game that the Shadows of the Empire game designers would work on, and is probably the most nostalgic game from this period, either because you played it at home, on your computer or Nintendo 64, or you remember seeing that epic arcade cabinet. It spawned a sequel with 2002's Racer's Revenge. Starfighter and Jedi Starfighter gave the prequel treatment to space combat games in 2000 and 2001, and of course, we would get to live out our adventures as Jango Fett and Bounty Hunter from 2002. But just because the prequels were at the top of the priority list for Star Wars entertainment during this time, doesn't mean that another game studio, BioWare, can't take players back a few thousand years before Anakin Skywalker.
There is good, and there is evil. We all have within us the capacity for both. But in the end, a final question remains. Which side are you on? In an epic struggle between light and dark, choose your path and seal the fate of the galaxy. Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, rated T for teens.
If you take a look at any list of best Star Wars games, or for that matter, a list of best video games period, there's a good chance that 2003's Knights of the Old Republic, or KOTOR, is going to be somewhere near the top of that list. The RPG from BioWare let us take a role in the galaxy as an unnamed protagonist, alongside Bastila, Karth, Mission, Big Z, and the rest of the crew aboard the Ebon Hawk. First announced by BioWare in 2000 and officially unveiled at the 2001 E3, Revan's story would be universally praised, financially successful, and take home a cargo ship's worth of Game of the Year awards. The sequel, Knights of the Old Republic 2, Sith Lords, goes into production that same year, except this time Obsidian is at the helm. The game releases just a year later, in 2004, and carries on from the events of the first game, with a new protagonist to control and galaxy-wide mysteries to unravel. These two games would also lay the groundwork for the MMORPG The Old Republic, which would release in 2011 and still carries on to today.
Well, in gaming, there is seemingly no bigger universe than the Star Wars universe. This is Jim So, producer of Star Wars Battlefront. Hi, Jim. Congratulations on the game.
Thank you. Star Wars Battlefront is an action shooter game. You can play first person or third person, whatever you want, anytime you want.
Cool. Okay, Jim, thanks so much. Good luck with the game. September 21st. That's Jim So. Yo, he's so cool.
With the prequel trilogy coming to an end in 2005, and LucasArts under a heavy restructuring that left a lot of Star Wars games either cancelled or rushed to finish, it was time to figure out where the company stood, and if it was viable to carry on with an almost entirely Star Wars-centric product mix. Most of the original IPs that LucasArts had created had gone by the wayside during the ramp-up to the prequel film release, and new LucasArts president Jim Ward was left to figure out what to do next. According to a quote from Rogue Leaders, Ward is asked to take stock of the situation at LucasArts, which led him to asking George Lucas and the rest of the board 3 questions in 2004. Do you want to be in the video game business? The short answer is yes. Revenge of the Sith would be marking the end of Star Wars in the movie theaters, at least at that time, so the video game market would be the area of growth for Lucasfilm. Second, do you want to be in the video game business? Star Wars is a powerful license, and they could easily license out the name Star Wars, make their money on the back end, but according to Ward, Lucas still had passion for the games division and the storytelling capabilities of these games. And the third question, is there the investment commitment to making this happen? Ward says a public company would have never gone for that, but Lucas, being the Hollywood outsider that he was, decides to make it happen. I'd also imagine that Lucas probably followed that up with the same advice he'd given all those years ago. Stay small, be the best, and don't lose any money. So with Jim Ward at the helm, LucasArts would strip back the number of games being released and focus on a few marquee titles, plus dip back into creating its own IPs again. Star Wars Battlefront, Republic Commando, and the first Star Wars LEGO games all released to great success, and a game I'll be taking a closer look at this season, The Force Unleashed, comes out in 2008. And while those games and their sequels are great, they unfortunately also mark the end of an era at LucasArts. In fact, by the time Republic Commando was in production, most of the team knew that it would be the last LucasArts game they would work on as the company continued to downsize. On December 21st, 2012, the Walt Disney Company acquired Lucasfilm, and that included LucasArts. The game company's name changes back to Lucasfilm Games, and the news that Lucasfilm Games would be shutting down and putting a halt to in-house production. So games that were in development are suddenly shelved, and fans are of course saddened by the cancellations. Star Wars 1313 being the one that seemed like it was closest to completion and had an eager Star Wars video game fanbase salivating at the possibilities of that game. But I think it's hard to say definitively that those games would have even come out given the shaky ground at LucasArts prior to the Disney sale. And we would be getting some new games out of the deal. There would be a brand new Battlefront and Battlefront 2, which, while controversial upon release, have evolved into one of the great Star Wars video game experiences. The space combat game Squadrons, and a whole new epic adventure with Cal Kestis and BD-1 in Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. Most recently, we've gotten to explore the criminal underworld of the galaxy far, far away in 2024's Star Wars Outlaws.
Here it is, the most eagerly awaited arcade game of the year, the brand new Star Wars. Sound familiar? Let's check out the action. Now, as Luke Skywalker, your mission is to reach the Death Star and find the tiny exhaust port that's the only spot vulnerable to your proton torpedo. As play begins, R2-D2 is flying, so all you have to do is blast away at the fighters and avoid the fireballs. Then you take the controls and navigate through the towers and bunkers on the face of the Death Star, looking for the exhaust port. The voice of the flight controller helps you through the game, and you hear other familiar characters from the film. Each time you're hit, you lose one of the shields protecting you. The third and final phase is in the trench, surrounded by gun turrets firing lasers. If you can dodge them all, you find the port where you have just seconds to drop the proton torpedo. Then you zoom away just as the Death Star disintegrates in a brilliant display of light and sound. There are 9 more levels, each with new hazards and faster and smarter opponents. There's both cockpit and upright versions, but the gameplay is exactly the same. This machine was supposed to be ready for the summer opening of Return of the Jedi, but just now is arriving. However, it doesn't need the tie-in with the film to make it a success.
At the time of this recording, it's been 43 years since that first Star Wars game released into an eager world, and our appetite for games from this universe haven't let up in the least. There's been well over 100 Star Wars games at this point, and with Zero Squadron, the third installment in the Cal Kestis Jedi series, and a new VR game from ILM Immersive on the horizon, there's no signs of this franchise slowing down anytime soon. Star Wars has done it all, from the bizarre to the endearing to the brilliant. There were the 8-bit platformers where you fight Scorpion Darth Vader, Star Wars Chess, where you get to control an army of R2-D2 pawns, to learning the best moves in the galaxy in Star Wars Connect, and killing some time with Star Wars Angry Birds. But it has also brought about some of the most influential and well-received games of all time, and my personal list of favorite games is long and always growing. It should come as no surprise by now, but I've loved Star Wars for as long as I can remember, and growing up in the late 80s and 90s meant that video games were my gateway to X-Wings, lightsabers, and the Force. Playing Rebel Assault and Rebel Assault 2 on my computer was where my love for these games began to grow, along with countless hours poured into Yoda stories and going on little adventures with Luke Skywalker. I remember saving up to buy a pre-owned Xbox so I could play Knights of the Old Republic, and went on to co-host a podcast specifically about KOTOR, the Old Republic podcast. I'd spend hours looking through the Star Wars Galaxy's message boards, even without ever playing the game, because an online Star Wars sandbox sounded like the most amazing thing that could ever exist. I'm a huge fan of the new Jedi Fallen Order series, and one day, I promise, I'll play through Outlaws, and I'm sure I'll love that too. This season I'll be taking a look at a few of the Star Wars series that are important to me, important to a lot of fans out there, and important to video game history. Rebel Assault, Shadows of the Empire, and The Force Unleashed, and maybe I'll even do a bonus episode for Dark Forces. Star Wars is important to me, and without video games, it's hard to know how my fandom would have evolved over the years, but I can't imagine a video game world without the entries and influences Star Wars has given us. Now I want to know, what are your favorite Star Wars video games? Is it Super Star Wars or Battlefront 2? Did you get lost in the world of Dark Forces, or was it one of the arcade games that drew you in? And more importantly, did you mix up a Sasori Vader cocktail to have along with my chat today? Let me know all of that stuff on my social media. It's at Drink the Video Games on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. And if you want to support the podcast, you can check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/drinkthemovies. There you can find bonus content for Drink the Movies and Drink the Video Games. Get extra episodes, hangouts, cocktail chats, and maybe even some gaming sessions in the future. I'd also love it if you dropped a review onto Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps get Drink the Video Games out to more people. And make sure to follow along on the YouTube page for the video version of this podcast, as well as playthroughs for every game I've covered so far. That's going to wrap it up for this episode about Star Wars video games. Join us next month when we dig a little deeper into these games and chat about Rebel Assault. Cheers.